the Correa trade, I actually have no problem with, and I actually kind of think they did fairly well given what they got getting out from underneath that, provided, and we talked about this literally that night, that we don't see further cuts in payroll, that money that was freed up actually is used for, to at least sustain the $130 million payroll budget that they've got so far.
The Stone Arch Bridge, John, just reopened, and I'm looking to sell it to you if you believe they're going to reinvest this money. Now, maybe the team is sold, which we're going to talk about later, too.
That's right. We'll also talk about that.
Maybe the team is sold. God, please let the team be sold, in which case all bets are off on that front, like the reinvestment front, the payroll front. But if this were to stick with the Pohlads, I just have no faith. I'm not willing to be naive enough at this point to be that. I agree with you. If they do reinvest that money, then yeah, it's a reasonable.
And from Falvey's point of view, one way or the other, if it does get sold, great, because he's still freed up an extra $20 million a year that way to work with. So,
well, you could also phrase that slightly differently, which is they're now paying $10 million per year of what has roughly been $130 million payroll in recent years, just to not have their starting shortstop.
Oh, listen, I mean, there is a
because they got nothing in return. They literally got nothing in return.
Right, absolutely right. Yeah, we'll talk a little to the point where it almost feels like Houston was trolling them. Where the general manager was like, literally, what's the worst? Who can I send back that is going to make it clear to their fans?
You joke about that, and I think maybe there was an element from the Twins side or just the league side where they wanted it to look like an actual quote unquote trade as opposed to just the pure salary dump, which it was. But I don't think it's a stretch to say the Twins received the literal least valuable player in the entire Houston Astros organization. They received a 26-year-old lefty who's at high A and has a 7 ERA there. And wait, there's more. He was signed as a street free agent to a minor league deal 2 months ago. Right, if you just lined up the Astros from best to worst, 175 guys or however many guys are in their organization at this point, I don't think it's a stretch to say poor Matt Mikulski, who will be a trivia question and probably a point of joking on this podcast for the rest of our lives, at least. I don't think it's a stretch to say he might be the worst one. And so that's what the Twins, quote unquote, received.
I when I saw it, and the more I've kind of heard about how much of this happened at sort of the Houston ownership level, it feels like this deal was driven more by Houston ownership than Houston general manager, which is, by the way, what the reasons why I'm like, I don't think of that. Listen, it's frustrating because it's definitely acknowledging how that contract either was a mistake from the beginning, which I think it was, but just because of his performance, but also a mistake because it was made before the payroll cuts came and so on. So much money was tied into it was. There's no way to view it as this trade now as a success unless you anticipate the sunk cost and understand the concept of sunk cost, right? But I get the feeling that trade was driven so much by ownership that Houston Astros GM was just like, I gotta throw some sort of code out there to just say how opposed to this trade I am doing. Who's going to look even embarrassing on the press release? Which it did.
I don't think that looks embarrassing for Houston. I think this looks embarrassing for the Twins. I mean, I think
exactly
a lot of
that's what I'm saying. He's trying to embarrass the Twins.
Maybe. I mean, it does sound like the Houston owner basically called Joe Pohlad or maybe Jim Pohlad, who knows, and pushed this along a little bit after the front office has talked about it. When we first heard word of this, I don't know, 30 hours before the deadline or whatever it was, when we were doing our morning podcast the day before, or whatever. You focused on the Pohladian aspect and the money saving aspect, which I think proved accurate. That once they saw the ability to slash payroll for the next 3.5 years, they would jump at it, and you were absolutely right about that. I looked at it more from the Correa standpoint, particularly after I had a chance to talk to Correa later that day, and he confirmed that he told them he would waive his no trade to go to Houston, nowhere else. Well, once I heard that, I said it was like the movie Inception. You plant that in someone's brain and you just let it grow. And even in one day, there's no way once, in my mind, and I think this proved accurate, from a human standpoint, and I am human, despite what you meant. Once you plant,
this is why we had to do video to prove the fact that Aaron was human.
Yeah, we can AI person just like, see, this isn't a real person.
So, yeah.
Would a robot have this hairline? No, I don't think so. Anyway, I think once you plant that seed in Correa's brain of I can jump ship from a sinking team, and there's no way to describe the Twins at this point, especially as anything other than a sinking team, to a team that has basically made the playoffs every year for, I don't know, a decade and has one of the best records in the league this year now. And I can go back home. You know, I have family there. I have friends there. They still have a house there. His wife is from there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Once you plant that seed in his head, he's just going to spend from that point until the trade deadline thinking about it. And he's not going to come to the conclusion of that doesn't sound appealing. And I think that's ultimately what happened. And the two sides worked out the money aspect. We kind of heard midway through that process that Houston had asked not only for like $50 million or more in cash. Basically, they wanted the Twins to cover half of the $104 million that Correa was still owed by that point. It was like $12 million this year and about 100 and something for the next 3 years total. But they wanted the Twins reportedly to toss in a hitter, a major league hitter, which I kind of tried to, connect the dots there. To me, it's got to be like Willie Castro, Trevor Larnach, somebody along those lines.
Right.
And the Twins rightfully, in my opinion, said, no, that's crazy. Like, we're not even saving that much money at that point. Why are we doing that? But they just kind of slid the money around and they settled on essentially 1/3 of the contract instead of half of the contract. They removed any other element of value coming from the Twins to Houston, and then they settled on Matt Mikulski as the just kind of here you go, take this guy so it can look like a trade rather than a pure salary dump. But and I agree with you in the sense I don't think the Twins did particularly well there, and I also think.
But would you have made that trade if you were Falvey?
Boy, I don't know.
And welcome to the end of this video. There's lots more. For another, just click on one of these boxes.
Or click on this circle in the middle to subscribe to all of our Twins Talk.
Thank you.
Gleeman.